Welcome back to the Empower Podcast. My name is Blaine, and today we're joined by Craig, founder, and Jimmy, the community manager over at GoKey, a project on Cardano, which is on a mission to help everyday people access wealth-building benefits of property ownership. So thanks, Craig and Jimmy, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
No worries at all. Really excited for this podcast. There's a little bit of overlap between our projects, so it'll be kind of cool to dive a bit deeper into what you guys are doing, how you got here and all that kind of stuff. But maybe to start off with, we could start with some introductions, tell the podcast a bit about who you are, what you do, maybe even a bit of background, how you got into maybe Cardano as well. That's normally quite interesting to talk about. So Jimmy or Craig, maybe Jimmy, we could start with you first.
I'll take the lead on that. How's everyone doing? My name is Jimmy. I hail from beautiful Ohio in the United States. I do a lot of stuff on Cardano. I've been in crypto for a couple of years, not very seriously until about a year and a half ago, dabbling in a couple other projects, and really got into Cardano after just doing a lot of research on like what the goals are, it just seemed like it seemed way more well put together, I guess. The community was really strong. I remember hopping into a couple Twitter spaces because I'm a musician. I also do some music stuff on Cardano, which is really fun. And I remember just hitting up some spaces, and the level of community is just so different from some of the other places that I've been in. And I was like, okay, this is pretty much where I'm planting my flag. And so I've just been trying to learn as much as I possibly can on Cardano. There's quite a bit to learn, but developing here is really fun. I met Craig in the early goings of native assets because the GoKey project just seemed like something really revolutionary, and I liked it. And we're both really big music lovers, so we kind of hit it off, and it started by me just putting a couple things together for him in terms of like his Discord server, and now we are here, and it's a beautiful thing. I love this guy.
Love it.
Likewise, my friend.
Let's go.
And yourself, Craig?
Well, hi, and thanks for having us. Big Impala fans here. A lot to like about your projects. So
back at you.
We've spoken a little bit before. We hosted a space with Greg a while back, and just always really like the whole team and kind of what you guys are working on. And I do think we have a lot in common in terms of, especially kind of like being mission driven and, just trying to help people at a pretty basic level. But I got into Cardano kind of, I don't think anyone came here on a super traditional path, but my background is in real estate and construction management. And I've dabbled in the crypto space, mostly just kind of speculating on tokens off and on since, 2016, 2017, something like that. Just really watching the space. I've been like really interested in, what are kind of the real world use cases for the technology? How could I use blockchain technology to improve things in the real estate and construction industries, which are, pretty antiquated and really sort of ripe for all kinds of digital transformation. But so much of my work was always around contracts and contracting and, disputes over contracts and things like that. And so, really it was like not until like late 2020 when I was like, started really to understand more about smart contracts and starting to think about like, okay, now I'm starting to see how these could be utilized in the real estate space and probably in the construction space as well. And so I said, man, I really want to build a project and see what we can do. So, basically, Cardano really popped up on our radar because, first of all, we just had to find, what is the best smart contract platform to build on. We looked at a handful, obviously Ethereum, but, we kind of had to make some decisions like, do we want to try to deploy quickly and build something and just get it out there? Or do we want to think a little bit more long-term about what platform we want to build on and which one really seems to be building the most solid foundation for not just the next couple of years, but like 5, 10, hopefully longer, more years down the road. And really Cardano was checking all the boxes but it was clear it's going to be probably more challenging to build on like in the immediate term, but we could see, we started diving into the community and learning more about what kind of people are building there, what kind of tools and tooling is being built there. We started seeing things like Marlowe and, now projects like Cardano Press, which we were talking about a little bit earlier, which are making it, people are pulling these like no code and low code tools together for Cardano, just like exist on other chains. So, it's pretty much clear that a lot of really smart people were investing a lot of time and energy in building the right kind of tooling for Cardano to make it a good long-term solution for us. So,
interesting.
We looked at all the tech, but then we did kind of dive in and try to get to know what's the community like too. And like Jimmy said, man, it's the people I've met in the community in real life and online, man, just like everything clicks. And it's just some of the smartest, most interesting people I've met. And everyone seems to have, it's not just a how rich can I get this year type of mindset. It's like, how can I make money, but also make a positive impact in the world. So like that's super important to us and kind of what really sealed the deal ultimately.
Yeah, I think that's firstly, shout out to the Cardano community. That's a common thing when I speak to people about the Cardano community, is the sense that, maybe this is the bias coming out, but this Cardano community does seem to be a bit different to many other crypto communities out there in the sense that it's not just about the money, it's about kind of making a real world impact. This is something that so many people I speak to in the community, they're passionate about that. Not to say that that doesn't exist in other crypto communities, but I think this is a very prominent thing within the Cardano community, which is super cool. And the fact about Cardano being, you landed on Cardano because of it being probably the strongest foundation to build on top of. And, if we use kind of construction kind of analogy, if you're building something like a skyscraper, you want to build that on a foundation of granite. And when I think of Cardano, I kind of think of it like a foundation of granite, to be honest. Like it is solid.
It's not always easy to build on granite. It can be harder and
it can be
tough
harder
on your tools, but that's
exactly. Alrighty, so that's your stories into Cardano. Now GoKey, can you explain what GoKey is?
Sure. Kind of the quick summary. We built this project, like you said earlier, with the mission of helping people access property ownership, whether that's like home ownership or, a small business wanting the opportunity to buy the property like that maybe their retail location is in, or anything else. We kind of have this core belief that it's a good thing for people, for families, for communities, when people really have an ownership stake in the property they occupy. And also, it's good for, at least in the United States, traditionally, it's always been like a good way for individuals and families to build kind of longer term financial security. So just by this kind of slow growth, then the value of equity that they have in their real estate. But over the years, and really accelerated in the last few years, like it's becoming less and less accessible. So we started thinking about like, how can we utilize blockchain technology to address the problem? And so we talk about it, and people say, well, how are you going to reduce the price of housing or real estate? And it's, we kind of remind people it's like not always about reducing the price. There are a lot of other factors involved, and like terms and conditions and things where you can kind of play around with some things. And basically we take some pretty old school kind of alternative financing type concepts and apply them to the blockchain, where you can like remove a lot of the trust issues around those things. But just in a nutshell, we're doing three main things. We're tokenizing property and property rights using NFTs. And another cool thing we're doing that we think is cool anyway, we're forming a DAO to give people more potential access to like investment type properties. Kind of collectively community owned and managed property, and also being able to potentially enjoy it depending on where the property is and what type of property is. And then we're also developing this, what we think is a really interesting like peer-to-peer application. So basically two parties, you or I or Jimmy and I could enter into a peer-to-peer smart contract to allow me to buy property directly from you. And basically you could we could enter into some sort of owner financing arrangement or lease purchase type arrangement, which is, a little bit outside the norm of how a person would go about buying a house using a traditional mortgage and a real estate agent. And then on top of all that, we're starting to think of these pieces coming together as sort of an ecosystem. We think over time we'll actually be adding more components, and we're also creating a token that is really designed to serve all the parts of the ecosystem. So one thing that's really unique about it is that we're creating what we've kind of called a stable-ish coin. Like we're not necessarily trying to peg to any type of financial asset or digital asset, but we are coming up with a concept where we can adjust the supply, the circulating supply of the token, to be proportional to the price of the real estate markets. So, in the United States, and I'm sure other developed countries, they have these price indices, like that. For example, in the United States, we have probably the most renowned home price index that comes out every month, and it basically just reflects the rate of increase or decrease of home prices. So basically, we would adjust the supply of the token in some proportion to the index, so that the token that people are using to, exchange real estate, trade real estate rights, whatever they're doing on the platform, there's kind of this underlying value proposition where it's kind of aligned with the value of the real world assets.
Interesting. That does make sense. So that coin is very specific to the products and services that you'll be using it for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The concept kind of evolved out of this idea that, so just a little background, real estate home prices in the United States went up just under 20% last year. And talking to some other people, it's similar in Australia and other countries around the world. So, if someone is trying to save money using US dollars for a down payment for a property, and the value of the property is growing at a higher rate, then clearly it's going to be very hard to save for a down payment. So I've always had one thing that really got me interested in crypto in the first place is the concept of sound money, right? So I've always kind of been of the school of thought that like it makes sense for maybe people to use a different type of currency for the thing that they're buying, and I think some other people are starting to establish this concept too. Like, you know, you could easily buy your coffee with a token that is pegged to the value of like the global coffee market. And you could buy your gasoline in a token that's pegged to the value of gas and the energy industry. So, you know, it's a little bit of a heady concept out there, but I think it's something that makes a lot of sense. And now we have the technology to allow us to start to, you know, dabble in that.
Yeah, interesting. So maybe just to recap a little bit. So there is this kind of tokenizing of property rights aspect. There's this DAO aspect, which allows people to maybe access investment properties, whatever. There's this peer-to-peer application that maybe could facilitate kind of buying and selling, maybe renting, I assume that sort of stuff. I'd love to go to the first one, the property rights. I think I heard it in a Twitter space. You mentioned this notion of real estate is like a bundle of rights. For people out there that aren't familiar with this sort of terminology, including myself, could you maybe unpack what rights mean in the context of real estate, and maybe give some examples of rights that would be part of this bundle of real estate rights?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's a concept that's pretty fundamental to kind of this like English common law based system that we have in the United States and other parts of the world that are kind of former, you know, parts of the British Empire and British colonies and things. You know, I first learned about it when I was studying to be a real estate broker, like in my really early 20s. I mean, I had never heard of any such thing at all. You know, I, like a lot of people, I thought, you know, you buy a house and you have the title to the house. But, you know, what I realized was like, you know, apparently back in, say, kind of medieval times, like when people would transfer the ownership of property, you know, they didn't have, like, obviously wasn't digital. A lot of them didn't even have these things on paper, but, you know, they would take like this bundle of sticks and just random stuff they find on the property and like bundle it up and like kind of symbolically hand it over to this next person. And so kind of what that kind of represents is like, you know, you have the property, but you have within that, you have all these other rights. So, you know, the right of possessing a property is a great example. And it's a pretty easy example because, you know, basically like that's your right to rent a property, or it's your right to possess it. But so at the same time, a person can own a property, you know, like own kind of what you call the fee simple title, which is basically represents this bundle. Like you can assign the right to possess a property to someone else. So it's like, I own the property, but I'm basically selling you the right to possess the property for a certain period of time. And basically that's what we know now as a rental agreement. And you have the right to control the property. So to kind of use it in a way that's, you know, within the framework of the law, but you also have the right to exclude other people from entering the property or possessing the property in some way. You might have the right to sell the property. And then the right to enjoy the property is another one. So like you can kind of do what you want to do on your private property, you know, for the most part within the
law,
within the realm of like whatever, you know, zoning regulations or whatever that you have to deal with. But another interesting part of all that is like you have these like present day rights, but you can also own or assign these rights as like future rights. So something that we had an interesting question in a Twitter space, you know, there was a guy who was like, you know, through some kind of mechanism, he had this future right to this property. Like he was going to inherit it or something. It was in a will, but at the time there was someone else living there in the property and like they were in his family. And, they weren't taking care of the property. So it's like that person has a right to, possess the property today, but he has this future right to own the property. So like the current guy with his rights is kind of affecting the guy's future rights, which have value. So it kind of illustrates the idea that, there are all these different rights and at different times. And, the way, the reason that's important is when you start thinking about one really cool way to access ownership of property, which is pretty non-traditional. The mainstream real estate professionals don't promote this, and it's partly because it doesn't necessarily generate quick commissions for them. But like the idea of like a lease with an option to purchase. So basically, like, let's say I wanted to buy a house from you, Blaine, and let's say I don't have enough money to buy it, but you agree to rent it to me. Or, let's say like you've been a landlord for quite a few years, and I say, you have this house for rent, and I say, okay, like, okay, I'd like to rent it for you for a couple of years, but I would also like to have the option to buy it at the end of a couple of years. And you might be like, okay, I kind of want to sell the property eventually anyway. And if you're a good buyer for the property, maybe I save myself a real estate commission. So, basically what we're negotiating is this like present day right of possession. So you still own the property, but I have the right to live there for a couple of years. And then I also have this option to buy it, which represents a future interest in the real estate, especially if I exercise the option. So you have to be able to kind of separate those individual pieces out so that you can, if you want to tokenize things and make this kind of an orderly process, that's kind of what we landed on in terms of the most efficient way to do that.
Alrighty, so when we're talking about tokenizing property rights, that would entail the ability to tokenize all these different rights that fall under that. Like you could tokenize each stick within that bundle of rights.
That's right.
So, and I imagine, if you can tokenize each kind of stick within that bundle, there could be different owners of these sticks. Is that potentially correct? And is that a possible scenario in the current system? Like, can you get that level of complexity within that property rights structure?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, you can. The problem is the executing it, right? So there's a lot of friction involved in every step. So there aren't like these clean, like, you can't go online and get a template to do this, like if it's an expensive property and things are really complicated, you're probably going to have to get an attorney and you're going to have to get other people involved. And so it's doable, but then, it probably costs a lot of money to do. And so most people are going to say, okay, that's just not really worth it. So that's kind of, that's one reason like a lot of people just don't really do that right now. But if you can tokenize these things and instantly record all of this immutably on a blockchain, you take out all that friction and you create all these efficiencies. So that's really the magic of it. We're really not doing anything that people can't do today. We're doing things that people can't do cost effectively today in a traditional way.
Yeah. So in theory, these things could happen in the current system, but there's just a heap of friction for them to do that. And if you can tokenize it, integrate the blockchain into the solution, then that removes a lot of that friction and makes it more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, a really good example, going back to this lease purchase option type of transaction. Some people, you might hear of this called like a rent to own or something like that. So, unfortunately, so some people offer this to people in almost like a predatory way. It's like, okay, well, we know you can't afford to buy the property, so I'll let you rent it for me for a few years. We'll negotiate a price that you can buy it in 2 years. But, let's say, like Blaine, if you were a bad actor and I made my rental payments on time. And I said, okay, I want to buy this property from you. I want to exercise my option. And, we have an agreement for me to buy the property from you for, say, $200,000. But the market value of the property has risen. So now the property is worth $220,000. So, as the owner of that option, that's kind of like a form of equity that's built in there. So that that option, if you think of it as one of the sticks in a bundle, that can be represented as a token that has value. And theoretically, I could sell that option to buy the property to Jimmy, if our smart contract doesn't prohibit something like that. But, let's say you're a bad actor and you say, okay, well, I know I agreed to this with you, but I want either 220 for the property, or I'm just not going to sell it to you, or whatever. And so I'm kind of out of luck, right? I maybe have the option to go into the court system and try to sue you. But then again, it's kind of like, okay, is it even worth it? The time, the expense, the legal fees, the lawyers. Whereas, we see a future where all of this is tokenized, and at some point, the real estate rights that we're talking about tokenizing will have legal standing, so that, the smart contract dictates everything, so that you can't back out of the contract on me. You can't rug pull me, right? So you have to follow through with your end of the obligations per the smart contract.
So the code is law in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly. We're not quite there yet, but that's the direction I think the industry's headed. So
yeah, and I like that sort of, if law could be codified somewhat, it just removes a lot of the grayness and the questionable decisions that can exist. But that's a completely different topic that is probably for a different podcast. One thing I wanted to ask was, because you guys are a RealFi project as well, I think with RealFi project, because there's this element of blockchain, this element of real world, there's a lot of kind of from the community angle, there's a lot of kind of exciting questions and kind of ideas of what this could turn into, stuff like that. I was wondering, Jimmy, what from the community side of things, what are some of the exciting things that they kind of talk about with the future of this? Because it's, this is completely new territory, and from my experience, it's kind of, there's some everyone just gets so excited about the possibilities.
So the neat thing about what I've done so far and what I've seen so far is just we get tons of questions, and when you see the level of questions that we get from the community, it's it's not like your traditional, project that you would see on blockchain. This is very different. You get these questions that are sometimes, and Craig will tell you, they're all over the place, because as soon as you start talking about this, your mind just goes everywhere. Where could this go? There's so many different applications that I think this could apply to. So we get a ton of great questions, and there are obviously a lot of people who are, they're into crypto, and they're like, well, I was just buying this because the price sometimes goes up and I make money. Most of the time it goes down and I lose. But you're saying, this has some real world application. Tell me about that, because a lot of people just aren't really used to real world application, and in something as important as it's the biggest investment most people will make in their lives. So to find kind of a new revolutionary way of doing that, I think really piques a lot of people's interests and curiosities. But then, like I said, you could just see the wheels turning when we start talking about it. The questions that come up are pretty, they're all really great questions. Some get pretty interesting though, as Craig will tell you. There's some crazy ones.
Yeah, I mean, the intersection of blockchain and real world, even if you're just looking at crypto, just on-chain stuff, there's millions of different use cases just in that world alone. But the moment you overlap that with the real world, that kind of triples or quadruples the potential use cases, I think. So it's
absolutely,
naturally, you just got to get all these kind of questions. And I find that so, interesting hearing them from the from the community, but also just like from like inside the team as well. Like there's just so many things to think about, and so many ideas, almost too many ideas sometimes it seems.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You know, it is hard to kind of boil this down to the essence of what it can be without it being too overwhelming. You know, so we have to be really careful about, like, you know, how we describe things, you know, like in our marketing and on our website and like paper and everything, because it can get overwhelming very quickly. Like if we tried to just create a long list of like all the cool things you could do with GoKey, like it would be too much, you know?
Yeah.
And we don't want to blow people's minds too much, you know, but it always reminds me of a funny quote from, I think it was John Oliver, like on one of his segments, talking about crypto, is like, you know, it's everything you don't understand about money combined with everything you don't understand about crypto or computers, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so now it's like also everything you don't understand about real estate, all combined into one project.
That's giving me a headache just thinking about that. Speaking of some of the cool ideas you mentioned earlier, the kind of the peer-to-peer application. I'm just trying to visualize how that would work in terms of where you would tokenize throughout that process. Could we maybe step through a simplified version of that process? Let's say you're selling a home. I'm pretty keen on that home. It's got nice roof. It's got nice doors or whatever. I want to buy that home. How would we go about that process on, say, the GoKey platform, and at what stages of that process would we start tokenizing things, like tokenizing the home, tokenizing property rights, tokenizing the warranty deed? Because I know that's your pinned thing on your Twitter post as well, which I'm keen to kind of hear about as well. But yeah, maybe stepping through the simplified version of what that process would look like.
Yeah, so here's kind of the process we're envisioning. So, you know, let's say somehow you've discovered this property for sale. So, you know, and in the future, we envision having, you know, essentially a directory online, sort of like a map-based directory. Mm-hmm. So, you know, let's say you're moving to the city where I own this house, mm-hmm. and you find it on the map for GoKey, mm-hmm. and it says, you know, this house is for sale, or you can, you know, maybe we'll sell it with owner financing, something like that, because I just want to deal directly with you, not have to pay a commission. I don't have a better place to park the money if you were to pay me cash, so I'm just going to let you make monthly payments to me. So just as an example, so you and I would get in contact with each other and figure out what it is we want to do. So we decide we want to do like an owner financing type deal. And so we'll say, okay, we need some different NFTs. So like we would have kind of a fee simple NFT that we would mint. And then what we do after that is kind of flexible. But, you know, let's say, you know, thinking back to this bundle of rights type of concept, we decide, okay, we need to mint some NFTs that, you know, let's say I'm going to finance you for like 2 years, you know, just for simple math. And then after 2 years, maybe you go get a loan somewhere else, or maybe we re-up our deal or whatever, but that way neither of us are locked in for too long. So maybe we create like 24 other NFTs, and like each month you're buying that NFT, mm-hmm. like that essentially is proving, like, it's almost like a receipt for the payment that you're making. And it's like, it's your right to live there. You know, your right to essentially own it for that month, but I'm still going to maintain ownership of the kind of fee simple warranty deed NFT until we go through that. So The timing of when we do that, we're still trying to dial in what that exact process would look like. I mean, if we were to do it today, it would be a very manual, like, type of process, because there's a certain amount of due diligence that both parties would probably want to do. I mean, like, you as a buyer would probably want to do some kind of investigation to make sure that I do actually own the house and I have legal ability to sell it to you. So, that's something that right now we're kind of prepared to help work the parties through. But then, we would visit an online library of these smart contract templates. So basically we would say, okay, here's the owner financing smart contract. Here we're going to fill in the price. We're going to fill in, who you are, who I am, and then we'll both sign the smart contract and deploy it to the blockchain, and then, make those tokens a part of it. So I would need to, as we develop it, hopefully we can come back and talk again about how that process is starting to look.
Yeah, because that is something you can like visualize playing out. Like it's buying homes and selling. I've never bought a home, but like, it's a normal thing that you see happening. Less so for younger people, but it seems like a natural fit for NFTs, and because of that sense of ownership, NFTs are all about kind of this digital ownership and linking that ownership of something physical, and then being able to break that down in different ways is so fascinating. So we'll definitely come back on again and kind of elaborate on that part. One thing I wanted to talk about, I know on your Twitter, that's one thing I want to talk about, the warranty deed on your Twitter. So that's pinned to your Twitter. Can you what is a warranty deed? Maybe first of all, and talk about why that is kind of a big deal. Is that kind of like the overarching NFT? Like if we talk about NFTs and there's different like layers of ownership, and if you visualize it kind of as like, those Russian dolls where they're all nested in each other, would the warranty deed be kind of the main one? Would that be the main, or what is a warranty deed?
Yeah. So a warranty deed is really designed, sometimes it'll be called a general warranty deed, and it's exactly that. So it's kind of the all-encompassing title, right? So if you have the general warranty deed on a piece of property, it's basically understood that you own and control all of the bundle of rights. So one way to really look at it is, you have the bundle of rights, and those maybe your different NFTs, but you have this like strap or string or whatever that ties it all together. That's the general warranty.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, technically, I think what we created there might be probably more accurately described as a special warranty deed, which sometimes means, like, this isn't your normal warranty deed because, that NFT really isn't the warranty deed. It's just kind of we think of it as a digital wrapper around the actual warranty deed that's recorded in our local jurisdiction and in the land registry. So all we're doing really is taking that and putting a digital wrapper around it so that you can start to interact with it in new ways and move it back and forth if you wanted to. Just for context, like that deed represents an actual piece of property. It's a small building lot that I own in the city where I live. And, if I wanted to transfer that to someone, I could send you that NFT today. And I think you and I would both say, okay, we agree that this is a digital wrapper, right? Like as the two parties to the transaction, we have this understanding, and we're going to say, for both of us, this is a good representation, to really make it legal and completely binding, we would need to sign some paperwork and sign something at the jurisdiction today. But in the future, let's say the county where I live like had all of its land records on the blockchain, and you could easily there wouldn't be this like layer of friction in between. It's just all part of the same type of system. So it's interesting trying to make this leap to a digital system from this kind of analog paper-based system that we have now. But lots of conversations with people in the title industry, which they're big players in the real estate industry here, and that's the direction they want to go, because like for their business it's much more efficient. And because like where I live, and every state is different, every county is different, so we have a pretty advanced type of land registration compared to like Mozambique or some of the countries where you guys operate, but it's still very fragmented. So it creates some challenges there. Like if we could get everyone on the same blockchain, then it would be much easier. But so now basically when I bought this property that I'm in now, in this state you receive what's called an abstract of title, and it's this like huge thick bundle of documents that trace the ownership of the property all the way back to, I live on property that's part of an Indian reservation, the Osage Reservation. So, it goes all the way back to when the United States, like basically, I forget the right word for it, but they basically granted this land to the Osage Indians. And then every owner after that, as the parcel, I live on like about an acre, but the parcels get smaller and smaller, so you can trace it all the way back. So it's kind of like the original like layer one chain. It's a very similar kind of parallel in terms of like just showing what is commonly called the chain of title. So that's always been one of the earliest conceptual uses of blockchain in the industry, is like basically digitizing the chain of title. And it's really the same thing. We kind of think of like, what GoKey's doing as kind of this digital version, like almost like a layer 2 on top of a layer 1 analog blockchain, with the assets on that chain being like a paper deed. And so we're basically just working in parallel on top of that until hopefully in the future, the two systems will sort of merge.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's the whole interoperability stuff. People normally talk about that in terms of blockchains, but I also think about it in terms of interoperability with off-chain systems as well. That's
a great way to put it.
You just need interoperability all around, really. Alrighty, we're kind of nearing the end. I wanted to talk about the how people can connect with you guys. I know you got your ISBO around the corner. Maybe you want to talk about that and just generally how anyone listening to this, how they can kind of connect with you guys and support your work. What are your socials? Is it Twitter, Discord? That sort of stuff for the listeners out there.
Yeah,
I would say all of the above. We have we got a Discord server that's been up for a while, a couple hundred members. Telegram is obviously available. The Twitter, we're not hard to find. As far as the Discord server and the Telegram, we're on it pretty much every day. I have both of them linked to my phone, so does Craig. So typically when questions come in, we're pretty quick to answer them. We also have a subreddit channel that we just created. So more information is going to be coming up on there. Probably missing a few things. Craig, pick me up, man.
Yeah, you can really reach all the socials from our website. If you scroll down to the bottom of our homepage, that's where they all are now. Mm-hmm. We'll probably move a few of them up higher on the page so they're easier and quicker to find. So ones that we interact with probably more frequently. But yeah, we do have, and that's at GoKey.network, just for the record. We do have an ISPO coming up, and pretty excited about that. So it's going to start with Epoch 342. And, you know, it's always been really important to us. You know, decentralization is important, and also trying to distribute tokens in kind of the most fair and democratic and public and transparent way possible. So we really like the ISPO model for that. And so we're going to run that for a while, and hopefully we can raise some funds for further development, especially on the technical side. And then at some point in the future, we'll have, we'll convert our stake pool to something that is, you know, more of a traditional margin and everything, but we're also, delegators can earn other types of tokens. And, you know, I think right now the thought is linking that up with our DAO. So like people who are staking for a long time or in significant amounts can earn even more governance tokens or NFTs associated with the DAO. So that's still pretty early days, but you know, we're happy to take any kind of questions, or, you know, love to hear from everyone. We're just want people to kind of understand what we're working on and why we think it's important, and you know, continue to you know, engage with everyone and help people get their questions answered, because typically there are quite a few.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I think, yeah, so the social media links will be in the description, and yeah, invite anyone listening to, yeah, pop on over to whatever their social media of choice and engage, ask any questions, all that sort of stuff. I think there will be a number of a bit of overlap in our communities, but those that are just kind of learning about GoKey for the first time, yeah, definitely recommend checking them out. Before I get into the last question, is there anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on?
You know, I don't really have much, man. I think we gave it a pretty good overview. And you know, I think one thing that I've always thought was interesting about Impala, when I first learned about them, you know, I think it was maybe Glenn, maybe he was on a podcast or Twitter space and talking about the deficiencies in like the African land registries and financing markets and all of that, and kind of talking about like how in America and other developed countries, like it's much more developed, and it is, but you know, we still look at it every day with like, you know, there's still so much room for improvement. So yeah, you know, we kind of like just want to help people understand that who are like in other international markets that, you know, maybe look at the way things are set up in the United States and be like, well, why do you even need something to make that process better? And you know, believe me, there are plenty of ways it could be better and more efficient.
Yeah, so I think that's applicable to most, well, not most, or maybe probably most. A lot of industries out there could be improved upon with blockchain. It's not to say that all industries need blockchain. There's probably some that don't, but there's definitely a lot that could make use of it. And I think real estate, the construction industry, architecture, that is definitely one where I see use case. Like my background is in architecture and construction. And yeah, there's one of my friends is also quite heavily involved in the Cardano space. We went to uni together, and we've been talking for years just about how inefficient some parts of that can be, and how, you know, blockchain, when it matures, can hopefully solve a lot of those. So last question, this probably maybe links back to what we're just talking about earlier, but what excites you the most about the future of RealFi? So looking into the future, maybe 5-10 years from now, this RealFi thing that we talk about in Cardano, what kind of gets you excited about the future of RealFi? Maybe asking both of you. So whoever wants to.
Yeah, Jimmy, you want to take this one first?
I don't know. It's hard to answer that for me because like I'm still, up until I met Craig, there was just a lot that I didn't know about all of this kind of stuff. So like me coming into this, I don't even know how far like down we could go with this. And I think that's probably the most exciting thing about it for me is just like, what are the possibilities? And, every day that we kind of get together, I'm typically learning something new. So I think that my answer is going to be way more underwhelming than Craig's answer, because this is like, he's got the dream, and I'm kind of, I'm learning and I'm along for the ride. So, for me, really, it has everything to do with just, I'm still learning, like, what are the possibilities and how far can this go? So I'm actually more interested in Craig, because I just like blanks my mind about that kind of stuff.
I mean, the possibilities is super exciting. I mean, that in and of itself is kind of enough, I think, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about RealFi, and if you're talking about it in the context of like real world applications for blockchain, I mean, the world's a very big place, and there are a lot of people, a lot of problems that I think quite a few can start to be addressed more effectively this way, whether it's anything from, the things we're talking about in real estate, or, helping address like climate issues and things like that, which there are projects on Cardano working on, health records, identity, all of these things. At the end of the day, for me, it's like just about trying to make people's lives better, and hopefully kind of be like a counterweight to kind of the traditional system of doing things seems like it's kind of gone off the rails. And a lot of people are kind of being left out, while a smaller amount of people like reap a lot of benefits, and they're more insulated from the problems that some of them and their huge corporations are causing. And so I kind of look at all of this as like sort of a free market based type of solution that more people can get involved with, to kind of help maybe swing the pendulum back the other way. But like we're talking about, there's so many ways that can happen in the future that I'm really excited about seeing what other ideas other projects come up with, because almost every day in this space I see something that's like, wow, that's really cool. I wish I'd thought of that type of ideas, so
yeah, great answers.
Keeps us up and motivated every day.
Yeah, I think if we could transport time travel 5-10 years into the future, it's got to look great from hopefully it looks great from a RealFi perspective, and it's going to be completely different to what we even anticipate now. Like, that's going back to what you're saying, Jimmy, about the possibilities. I think that is true. Like, it's hard to comprehend what could materialize from this. And I can't wait. 5 years, 10 years, just being able to see what that world looks like. Hopefully it's a good one.